Hi, my name's Joel. I'm a pastor at Tropical Sands Christian Church in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. I also happen to be the sax player in the praise band, and as you can see, I have way too many saxophones. Alto saxophones are available for pennies on the dollar on eBay. You can spend not a lot of money and get a great horn. In my opinion, they're undervalued if you know what to look for. You don't have to spend a lot of money on a saxophone. First off, let's get away from the myth of a shiny saxophone. If you can live without the shine, you can get a great saxophone, a great sounding saxophone for not a lot of money. This is a Vito saxophone, American made in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Pretty ugly in terms of that finish, isn't it? But look how big that bell is. These days they have big bell horns that are kind of copying that old large bell style. It's a Vito student saxophone. What you look for is not the finish. You look for dents, although most dents don't make any difference in the sound. But most people would not really want a dent here. So make sure this looks good to you in the pictures. Also, look at the leather pads. You won't see them here, but you will see them in eBay pictures. The pads are covering up the holes right under these pearl keys. If those are in pretty good shape, then you've probably got a good horn. If those, that's what makes the difference. This was a Vito. This would be available pretty inexpensively. I think I gave less than $200 for this particular copy. That price is going to go up and down. Vito Kenosha, Wisconsin models. Some of them are collectible. Some of them are in very good shape. This one obviously was hanging on a wall or sitting out in the open for many, many years, thus doing this. I like this finish myself. The great thing about brass is that as it tarnishes, unlike rust, which will eat through the metal, the tarnish on brass will not damage the metal. Eventually, that tarnish will seal. It will be all red, or it might be green like the Statue of Liberty, depending on how much copper is in the brass. This is a Vito Kenosha, Vito saxophone made in Kenosha, Wisconsin, about early 1900s. Not bad for a couple of $100, hey? Buy them all day long on eBay. Here's one usually would be available even cheaper. This is a Conn Shooting Stars saxophone. This one happens to have a 4-digit serial number. That means it's very old. I love these Conns. They're called Shooting Stars because the pattern of engraving, if you could see that, shows a shooting star pattern. The ones that are made in America are very good. The earlier the better. Later on, they made some in Mexico, which are not bad saxophones either. You look for dents in the pictures. You look for the bottom curl is often dented, where the student will end up banging it on the bleachers or on a chair or something. Odd thing about this one is the finish was in pretty rough shape, and then somebody, without cleaning up the finish, came and put a clear coat over it, which doesn't hurt the horn, but they've basically preserved a pretty bad finish on this. This saxophone, again, these can be had for about $150 or so. Let's see what it's. I learned on one of these. The one that I have is still, my son still uses it. I loved it so much I had to get myself another one. I've bought several of these. I've given them away to students. Let's see what it sounds like. Not bad. Not bad. This is all your high schooler needs to learn to play saxophone, to determine if they really want to play or not. If they really want to play, then you can go and spend more money on a better or prettier horn. But for starters, get them something like this. Grab them a used horn off of eBay. That's what they need. I have 2 of this model. This happens to be called a Cleveland because it was made in Cleveland, Ohio. It's made by King. You would know that by the brass bolts that are on the ends of the little sound posts here that are holding these keys together. Again, you look at the finish. This one does have the little dent here that you would expect to find. The bell looks good. The finish looks good. I don't know if it's been refinished or not, but see, it's still got a lot of gleam to it. Cleveland saxophones The lacquer seems to have a lot of color in it. It's almost like it's painted gold. It's almost like it's painted. That doesn't hurt it. I don't think they would want to call it a paint. But if you've ever heard of a King Super 20 or a King Zephyr saxophone, then you know that King made some very good saxophones. This one was made in Cleveland, Ohio. Let's see what it sounds like. Not bad. Not bad. On eBay, I will call this King Cleveland 1. So now let's hear King Cleveland 2. Why don't you buy 2 horns of the same kind? Because these are obviously well-built horns. I have loaned them out to students who would end up, some of them lose interest and give them back. If I'm lucky, they give them back. They're likely to go to a pawn shop and get rid of them or something. But this is King Cleveland 2, probably a little newer model than that one, but everything's the same. Look for the straight wires. They should say that everything seems to work well. If you say, well, I'm no saxophone player, but the text would say, well, I'm no saxophone player, but everything seems to be working. All the pads seem to be springing back. That is important. If it says for parts only, let it slide. Leave it alone. You might see one, if you know what you're looking at, you might see one that's worth buying, but if it says for parts only, if they say it's too broke, it's busted, then believe them. Believe them. If they say it works great, I saw one the other day that was called mint condition. Mint condition. I looked at this, I thought, well, that should have been called dent condition because it was so chopped up. Anyway, these horns go for under $200 on eBay all day long. You can spend more. I've seen some really nice, this is a nice copy actually. Looking for the pads on this one are very fresh. The corks are not very costly to replace, but the corks are there. If you know a saxophone player that you can trust to look over these horns and do minor repairs, or if you know a repairman that's willing to look at horns that he did not sell, then you can take more chances on the saxophones that you see. Again, King Cleveland, we'll call it King Cleveland 2. You get the drift. Not the best example of musicianship, but a pretty good example of a cheap student horn that you can get for a song. You remember that this first dull-looking horn we had was a Vito? This shiny-looking horn is a Vito too, but this is not Vito Kenosha. This one was made in Taiwan. You'll find where they're manufactured and serial numbers somewhere under the thumb hook. And it looks like a shiny horn. Truth is, this one was in pretty bad shape when I got it. I took a brasso and a very fine steel wool, and I've been slowly taking the lacquer off of this, which I think makes for a better sound. An unlacquered horn, for some reason, if it's made that way, it's going to cost even more than a lacquered model. This one had some dings, and I had to replace some pads. I had to fix some sound holes. If you hear a horn squeaking a lot, it usually means there's a leak somewhere. Sometimes you can just get a leak light and look for leaks in the horn. Sometimes you can fix that yourself with a little bend or get a rubber band and tighten it shut and leave it there overnight so that it all gets a good seal on it. We don't have time to cover all of that, but we do have time to show you a Vito Taiwan. Taiwanese horns are pretty good. Taiwanese horns are pretty good. In the United States, the Conn was made in Elkhart, Indiana. A lot of great horns made in Conn in their day. Cleveland, Ohio, a lot of good horns made there. Kenosha, Wisconsin. There was a manufacturing center in Kenosha, Wisconsin. When you start getting foreign, Japan, well, of course, you have a Paris for Super Action 80s and SML. That's the king of that's the best. The ultimate horns are made there. Japanese horns are good. Yamahas, the early Vitos that were made in Japan were probably made at the same factory. Yamaha 21, 22, 21s and 23s, those are student model horns. Should be able to get into those for $300 or $400, maybe less, depending on the shape of the body. Sometimes it's worthwhile to get something with a bend in it if it means you can get a good playing horn for a lot less money than you ought to. It's like a car driving off the showroom. Once it's a used car, it loses a lot of its value, but it probably still works. Same thing with the saxophone, especially these altos, which are so common among students. This is a Vito Taiwan. Not bad. Has a few leaks, actually. A good repairman giving this a once over would be good. I'll try to tweak those before it goes out the door. But it's a great saxophone. Once again, you can get these things for about $200, $300. I don't know. Not much. Now, let me show you what I consider to be the best buy on eBay. Best buy in a used horn. People will argue with this. Some people really love the classic American horns. I do too. First four of these are classic American horns. Good heavy brass, not going to bend easy. This one's got a few dings in it, but it's still in pretty good shape too. Really a strong horn. I'm surprised by this one. This isn't how I look. Shiny horn, look, pretty shiny horn. This is a Jupiter. Jupiters are great horns. This one happens to be a 767. There are 567s and 667s on the market. Those are earlier models of these. If it looks good, if it looks like a good horn in the pictures, then it probably is. Go for saxophones where you've got a lot of pictures to look at. But the 767, I've seen it advertised as if it's a step-up horn or as if it's a professional level horn. It is not. It is a student level horn. Brand new, they do cost well over $1,000. Well over $1,000. Now you can get them for under $5 used. The only problem with Jupiters is that the lacquer tends to get worn off on them. Some of the early ones, they got worn very badly. I had one of these that I took the lacquer off of. Beautiful sounding horn. I think they're in really good regulation. Any Jupiter is going to be a fairly new horn, 4, 5, 6 years old, not like these that are 40, 30, 40, 50 years old. It's going to be a fairly new horn, which means it'll probably be in good shape, unless it's been abused. Let's try it and see what we got. Best buy on eBay is very often a Jupiter. Now, the Jupiter 800 series and the 900 series, those are step-up horns. You can expect to pay a little more for them. If you find a great price on them, then get it. You don't want to. You would expect to pay more for them than you do for a 767. Just because it's shiny doesn't mean you need to be paying a lot of money for it. The 1100 series, they call them Jupiter XOs. Those are professional level horns. There's a horn out now that came out for a while called the Jupiter Capital Edition. Capital Edition. That actually is a step-up horn. It's a nice step up from the student model horn. Your student won't know the difference. Your repairman will. They're easier to tweak and adjust. There's one that came out called they called it a Carnegie Edition. Now, don't be confused by the letter designations. This is a 767 GL. They'll say, oh, the GL, that's really, GL just means gold lacquer. Just means it's all gold colored instead of being silver colored. It has nothing to do with the gold content of it. But this is one of the best buys on eBay, as are a lot of the Jupiters. I'm a strong endorser of Jupiter. I love Yamahas. They're very good horns. They tend to be a little pricey. I love cannonballs. Cannonballs hold their value very well, but they tend to be very pricey. You'll find a lot of them out there, but they're going to go for not much less than new. So go for a student horn. Get your student something that they can use, something they can grow with. I could get rid of all of my horns except one, and it could be any one of these, and I would be able to do the same gigs I do now. I've been playing saxophone for 45 years. I think I know an alto sax, and a good sounding one when I hear it. If you look for them on eBay, you can get your student a great saxophone, and you can get it for a song.